racing culture. These are some people that really inspired me. Raise your hand if you know any of them. Recognize any of them?
Alexandra.
Yes, yes. On the left, Alexandra Houchin. I got a chance to ride with her son in Colorado. She's an amazing person, like just a legend of bike packing at this point. These people are all just bike pack racers, not just. They're just very inspirational. Honestly, if you want to get inspired about bikes, check out some things that they've written online, their blogs. To be completely honest, if you want to just get inspired about life, like check them out. Check out their stories. They're amazing. And part of what appealed to me about these people is that they were not these amazing professional athletes with these sponsorships that, just seemed like on another level to me. On the top left, that's Josh Cotto. He won Tour Divide, and he's a full-time nurse. He just found some time off and went out and won like the hardest race ever. Alexandra, we mentioned, her story is amazing. Hepe Braun on the top right, that's my bike, is named after. He designed this bike himself. And all of these riders are single-speed riders except for Josh Cotto on the top right. So that kind of was part of why I chose to do this on a single gear. It's another thing a lot of people ask me about, like, why the heck didn't you add gears to your bike? Honestly, I just was riding single speed a lot, and I thought about putting gears on up until the last minute. I was talking about it. It's not like I was very confident. I didn't think I could do this on one gear, but I think I just bought so much gear I ran out of money. I didn't know drive train on my bike, so just go what you got, right? So that brings me to Tour Divide. I'll kind of talk about like my plan here and how I was able to do this. I was at a point in my life where I knew I was like ready to make a change in my career. I was a teacher for 9 years. I taught English, middle school and high school. And I just knew I needed a break. My partner, Lizzie, who's also here. Lizzie, would you raise your hand?
Woo! Yeah!
Lizzie is was a travel nurse. She's a nurse in Richmond now. And we had talked for a while about going out west while Lizzie does some travel nursing and doing some traveling, and I would figure my life out and do a bunch of bike pack races. So that was part of it. And honestly, it was pretty crazy. I went from like being in front of kids in my classroom to literally the next day I was camping outside of Banff, having flown there overnight. I was just about to do the Tour Divide the next day. So it was kind of surreal. So yeah, a little bit more on the Tour Divide. I mentioned the mileage. It's 149,000 feet of ascent. That's the elevation chart right there on the right. Not a lot of flat. It goes on the spine of the Rockies. You're just going up and down every single day. There's one flat part, relatively flat, which I'll talk about. But yeah, that's the Tour Divide. So I got up there. I don't have a good picture of the start. That's like the only picture I have on the top right. A lot more people showed up. The start was kind of crazy. The start to each of these races was just hectic. Yeah, so I had my bike in a box, got it unloaded off the plane, and I'm in Banff, which is really nice, like tourist ski town. And I'm just unloading my bike stuff in the middle of this town. There's just bike stuff everywhere, tourists walking around. I thought I forgot my Garmin, couldn't find it. Finally get to a campsite, and then the next day I'm riding to the start of the Tour Divide, and I get lost. Going to the start. Somehow like hike-a-biking up like a ledge to get to the start of the Tour Divide. Yeah, that was that. Those are all my gear on the bottom left, or bottom right.
Was all that gear wrapped up in what we see here?
So not quite. This is kind of meant to mimic just how I packed it. I honestly just like grabbed a bunch of stuff to pack this all up, but it basically was this. The big difference on Tour Divide, I had aero bars right here, which made a huge difference, and then I also had water bottles mounted to my floor. So that's pretty much the main difference, but everything else as it is here is pretty much the same.
Anything on your back?
Good question. Yeah, Tour Divide, I wore a Solomon Trail Runner vest, which I love. If any trail runners in here, a lot of gravel riders are starting to use those. It's just like really tight around here. It keeps the weight up top. Like barely knows it. So a little bit of weight. All right, so I'm gonna start with the bad stuff first. I'm not gonna like go through chronological because it's just still a lot. But I'll talk about a few things here, and then I'll get to the good stuff. The bottom left, that was my biggest day. I did 172 miles. This is a high and a low. Like, I'm really proud of that. I was texting people a photo of that. But this is an example of a challenge I faced throughout the whole race. I would get affected by other people's paces. A big part of the Tour Divide, like, there's so many people out there, and you're riding with others a lot. I got caught up in this excitement of trying to go really, really far one day. We had a relatively easy day, and there was like 30 or 40 miles to push to this hotel in the southern part of Yellowstone. And I was like, hell yeah, let's do this. And then a couple of those riders just disappeared. They just dropped me pretty much. And then it got dark and it got extremely cold, like below freezing, in the middle of nowhere. Luckily I was with one other person, we kind of toughed it out. We show up to the hotel, the other guys are asleep in beds. Of course I slept on the floor. And then I woke up the next day and could barely move. Like, every muscle in my body was just done. And I've been doing, my goal for each day was around 130, 140 miles. And so doing that day after day, it just takes a toll. And I pushed it a lot here and I paid for it. I could barely ride the next day. So that was a challenge throughout all these races. It's just like stick to my pace. That's all I was trying to do. I didn't want to burn myself out and not finish. My only goal really was to finish. In the middle, we actually, I think, did pretty well weather-wise on the Tour Divide. In previous years, there's been some like really bad rain. This was one section though, in the Canadian section, where there was some really bad mud. This is pretty common. Somewhere on the Tour Divide, you get this. The mud, they call it peanut butter mud, where it just cakes on your bike so much that your wheels won't even turn. And sometimes you just have to pick your bike up and like slosh through this ankle-deep mud to carry it. Some people have had to do that for like 20, 30 miles, I've heard. For me, it wasn't too bad. It was a couple miles. But honestly, people's drivetrains were messed up after that. And I sprayed with the hose and I was pretty good. One gear was all right. On the bottom right is a picture of the basin. Raise your hand if you've heard of the basin. Yeah, this was the hardest part in my opinion. The basin is this extremely flat, desolate part of the route where there's absolutely nothing for really over 100 miles. I guess 150 really. There's kind of a gas station after about a 100-mile stretch, but before that there's nothing. You have to pack extra water. There's no water out there, and it just goes and there's nothing out there. Particularly on a single speed, this is the point where I definitely wished I had gears the most. People think it's about the hills that make single speed a challenge. It's not the hills, it's not the climbing, it's the flat parts. That's where I struggled the most. So I was super spun out in the basin. Yeah. And then the basin is where the wind starts. The wind was so bad, headwind, like coming straight at me. It was just constant, like it never stopped. It was mostly headwind, but then it would come from all directions. And it just makes it so hard to ride. And the wind didn't stop from that point on down to New Mexico and the end of the race, to be honest. Headwinds were everyone's biggest challenge out there. I rode with a guy who was riding his third Tour Divide, and he was in his 70s, total badass. He said this was the hardest basin stretch he'd done ever. So I was completely spent. I had like nothing left. Like I said, there's a gas station that you get to with a subway, and I ordered just all the food, and it was the most amazing thing ever. Having gotten through the basin, I mean, the feeling was just like I survived. But it wasn't all bad. A lot of this was amazing. Some of the highs, I'll talk about the picture in the top middle there and the bottom right. Right after the basin, or shortly after it, you get to a place called Brush Mountain Lodge, which is this really well-known kind of mainstay of the Tour Divide. It has a lot of history to it. It's where just a lot of riders stop and they basically like cater to you. It's this oasis for riders. And you're coming out of the basin, so you're just completely drained. You're like nothing left. You show up, it's this beautiful ranch lodge place, and you just collapse on the couch, and they hand you a chocolate milk and a beer, and they're just like so nice to you. The woman who runs it, Kirsten, is just the best. She's the coolest lady ever. I remember talking to her. She told me, she was like, yeah, you know, I used to, back in the 60s, I used to guide people through acid trips. She's like, I'm doing the same thing out here. You guys are all out here tripping. Thank you. Like, thank you so much. So nice. She had a picture on her wall of Mike Hall. That bottom right picture. Mike Hall still has the record for Tour Divide. Tragically, he was killed a couple of years later. Just total. That's the photo it says. It was. He was on a race getting hit by a car. Yeah. Yeah. A long race. Yeah, his record still stands though.
I was gonna ask you what's his record.
Oh, good question. 12 days, 14 days?
Whoa. He did that in 14 days?
It's like 13 days, 16 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Close to 14.
It's
Some 14 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was amazing. Another huge highlight of the Tour Divide that I think stands out compared to the other races were the people. I didn't expect this, but just like all the people that I met out there it was awesome. And these were people from all over the world. People come from all over. You do the Tour Divide, it's like this bucket list thing that they want to do. And everyone's just super stoked. So, and you just make friends quickly when you're doing this crazy thing and you're really excited about it, but you're also like suffering each day. Great way to make friends very quickly. So, yeah.
Is there a max cap limit, Josh?
Pardon?
Isn't there a max cap? You have to finish it in so many days or?
Finish one, yeah. So it's on track leaders, and they have what's called the sweep, the broom. And if you fall behind a certain amount of this broom, this each broom, you're considered touring. If you stay ahead of it, you're considered racing. So I'm not nowhere near that. I was pretty solidly like in the middle. I stayed ahead of the broom. I was in racing status, but there were a lot of people like fighting each day to stay ahead of it to not get relegated to touring or yeah.
Is the broom a certain amount of days?
It's like 100 miles a day.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's pretty much a 30. If you're 30 days and under, you're considered racing. But it's not like there's a real broom out there. It's just what you see online on track leaders.
Yeah.
Say if you was downgraded to a tour, would you be able to catch up to get back in? Or is
Some people do. I rode with a couple guys who
you're
did
able
like,
to catch back up?
yeah, these guys I rode with did like a 200-mile day to catch up. A lot of people would have like things go wrong with their bikes. And, you know, that just puts you, it's not your fault. Like you gotta get your bike fixed
They just
or
won't
something.
finish.
And then they just do crazy miles to catch up. And yeah, it happens. The final stretch, so I pushed through New Mexico. These are some shots from the last it's like a 60 or 80 mile stretch to the end of the border. And it's just straight and flat. It is road, but on my single speed, I was struggling, and I just had to like go to this place to finish. A rider that I've been riding with a ton was just ahead of me, and I was like super motivated to catch up with him. It was just a really cool ending. We were playing music out there, kind of racing to the end, and I pulled up at the end, skidded to a stop, and it was just a really fun ending.
What time of day?
It was, I think, around midnight actually. Yeah, it was night. I got to see the sun go down on that final stretch, and there were people there finishing also. Lizzie showed up in our van with our 2 dogs. She brought pizza and beer for everyone.
That's your record.
That's me on the right. Yeah.
No, your time.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I didn't talk about the time. Yeah, I did it in 21 days and 11 hours. So close to 22 days, but not quite there. My goal was 24, so I beat my goal. So yeah, got in the van, drove to a hotel, and just ate all the food. Just didn't stop eating, didn't stop sleeping, couldn't barely move. And then the Colorado Trail race was coming around. And before I talk about this, I will mention a little bit, like recovering from these races is a challenge in itself. If you read or listen to any of those other racers that I talked about, they all talk about this. Like, you go from just worrying about your bike, food, and water every day to life. Like, you gotta go back to being a normal person. Like, that's just a thing you have to do. And you also can't eat 10, 12,000 calories a day if you're not riding 150 miles a day. But my brain doesn't know that, so it can get out of hand very quickly. So, especially doing all 3 of these races, like I had to really force myself back on the bike and to recover a little bit quicker. A guy I rode with a little bit on the quarter ride, I remember calling him up, and I'm like, how you doing? It's like a month later. He's like, yeah, man, I got a drinking problem and an eating disorder. So yeah, Colorado Trail happened. I saw the sign up link, signed up, just like, screw it. I think I like posted on Instagram, and then I told my family, and they were like very concerned. What is wrong with you? I don't think they knew. This is something I hadn't talked about. Like, Triple Crown was never really the plan. It was Tour Divide, Tour Divide. I thought and breathed Tour Divide like every day for a year in advance. I was training for it, built the bike around it. I may have mentioned Triple Crown after a couple beers to my friends. I think you and Lizzie probably were the only people, my family knew nothing. And they were like legit concerned for me why I would sign up for another one of the races just after doing the Tour Divide. But I did it, and we drove up. We were living in Flagstaff, Arizona at the time, so it wasn't too far from the start of this race, Durango, Colorado. We drove up there, and it was a rough start. I got 50 miles outside of Flagstaff and realized I didn't have my shoes. No shoes. Riding like sandals, I guess. Also, I lost a lot of things in Tour Divide.
I can hike on the Colorado Trail. Do you need shoes? Do you need shoes on that bike? Do you need shoes on that bike?
So this was about a month later. Yeah, about a month. So I just want to point out this elevation chart real quick. So last year we were starting from the right. So Durango is on the right. And what do you notice about that elevation chart? It goes straight up. So there's a big debate, like which part is harder to start from on the Colorado Trail, Denver or Durango. When you start from Durango, you go from like 7,000 feet up to 12,000 feet in less than 20 months. It's really painful, and you just push your bike down.
After the tour.
Pardon?
A month after the tour.
A month after the tour, yeah. You're supposed to avoid elevation sickness, you're supposed to acclimate, which means just like hang out at a high elevation for a couple weeks. I didn't really do that. Flagstaff was at 5,000, I think.
I think 7.
Yeah, it's better than Virginia. Like right now we're like 7 elevation. But elevation sickness is a thing. People are throwing up. It causes you to get extremely like dehydrated and just weak and dizzy. I had a little bit of it. I think some other people had it worse. The dropout rate on this race the first day was a lot. The dropout rate total, I think it wasn't quite 50, but it was around 40 something. So a lot of people just quit who had signed up.
Josh, how many people on this race also finished the Tour Divide while they were competing?
Good question. So 5, including me. Yeah. So 2023 there were 5 Triple Crown Challenge finishers.
What about Lael? That's 6.
6 with Lael.
Because she wasn't able to do ACT.
Lael, yeah, Lael. Right. So 6 for this. One of them.
I forgot about Lyle and I said, how dare you?
Okay, so Colorado Trail, I'll probably talk the least about. I mean, I love the Colorado Trail, it's amazing, but I want to make sure I say my Arizona Trail. It's very close to my heart. This was the start, another just crappy picture. 4 a.m. start, brutal, and you're just pushing up and up and up. This is a picture from Indian Ridge, which is basically the top of that first part that we're looking at the elevation chart. That's where I got a chance to ride with Alexander Hatchman for a little bit, and just kind of talk to her, and then she just zoomed away. But yeah, what can I say about the Colorado Trail? Oh, this was my second time riding it. So I had ridden it a couple years before. It was like my first big solo bikepacking trip. That time I went from Denver to Durango. I did it in 14 days. My only goal this time was to beat that record and to finish it again. These are some pictures from the San Juan Mountains, which is this super just desolate stretch of mostly pushing your bike up really rocky passes. I think the only like life forms I saw all day were those 2 birds right there. And it's just a lot of parts are like sketchy. Like you're hiking bike and you look over and it's just like a 100-foot drop, sheer drop down the mountain. It was very like overcast that day.
It's not sketchy, no.
A challenge physically and mentally for sure getting to San Juan. But every day is beautiful. I tried to push it. I did do more night riding, I think, on the Colorado Trail race, just because I realized like how slow I was going. I should talk about how the Colorado Trail and the Arizona Trail are very different from the Tour Divide. Very, very different routes. The Tour Divide essentially is a very long gravel route. There's a couple single track sections here and there, but mostly it's all rideable. Arizona Trail and Colorado Trail, especially on a single speed, a lot of it is not rideable. And you're just pushing your bike and hiking. I mean, I hiked hundreds of miles probably. This is a shot on the left of Cathedral Ranch, which is kind of like Brush Mountain Lodge up the Colorado Trail, just super awesome place. They take care of you, all the snacks and treats. This is the high point, 13,000 feet about. I pushed up that through the night and rode past it a bunch, and then I camped just on the side of the trail, and it was pitch dark, and I had a bivvy with me for this, so I just set up my bivvy and slept. And then I wake up, the sun's coming up, I slept in it. I was exhausted. And the sun came up, and I could see all around me, and I had camped right in front of this massive valley, just this beautiful valley that I had no idea was there, because it was completely pitch dark. That picture doesn't really do it justice, but it was like just this moment of shock.
What was the temperature at night?
It wasn't too bad on the Colorado Trail. It would get colder, especially at the higher elevations.
Freezing?
In the 30s. Not really freezing. Not in Colorado. Yeah, it wasn't too bad. On the right is Fooses Creek, which coming from Denver, coming from the north, was like the worst hike a bike I'd ever done. I was pushing my bike for like 4 hours. Going north, it was the most fun I'd ever had going down a mountain with a bike. It was awesome. I did a lot of hiking at night, overlooking the Breckenridge, I believe it was. And there was like thunder going on in the distance. In this section, this little fox followed me on my hike up the mountain. I was like sitting there eating some beef jerky, and this fox comes up, and he just followed me up the mountain. I made a little friend up there. Some more wildlife. And then I finished. 7 days and 14 hours. I didn't beat my yeah, I finished, and right before I finished, so I was actually like pushing really hard to. I was already like towards the back of this race. I wasn't competitive in the Colorado Trail race, but I didn't want to be the last in the single speed category. I was trying to be this one single speed rider. I was just like pedaling so hard all day long, and it was just like a crazy last day for this crazy trip. Totally frantic, totally burned out of water, out of food. Just like, I gotta finish. And I do this like big hike a bike, and there's a ton of downhill. And the last like mile of the Colorado Trail is this super serene, just gravel, winding downhill, and this river flowing alongside of it. And right before that, I came out of this single track, and there's this clearing, and I see these two guys right here, these bighorn sheep, and they were just looking at me. We kind of had this moment, and they were just like so peaceful, and I was just like frantic and hectic, and they were just like, chill, bro. Yeah, so I finished, and then there was one final step. So again, recover, just on the couch for a couple weeks.
How long do you get to go recover this thing?
So October 19th was the Arizona Trail race. So it was a little bit more time. I finished, I guess, in August for the Colorado Trail. So I did have some time. Honestly, at this point, I wasn't really training a whole lot. It was just like, just get back on the bike. Just do 20, 30 miles maybe. Like, you know what it is, just try to be in decent shape. So I signed up for the Arizona Trail. This is the one that I was most excited about, to be honest. We lived in Flagstaff, which was right on the trail. So it's like, I had no excuse, I had to do it. And I was just like so fascinated by this. The desert to me is just amazing. I couldn't wait to explore it. Little did I know what I was getting myself into. The Arizona Trail is definitely the hardest thing I've ever done by far. A little bit about it. It's 83,600 feet of ascent, 837 miles. It goes right through the heart of the state. So if you look at that elevation chart, There's a couple peaks there, so we're starting on the left this time. That one really big peak is Mount Lemon. It's this notorious hiker bike that just takes forever. It took me all day to do like 10 miles on that thing, literally. And then there's a big drop towards the end. Does everyone know what that is? Grand Canyon. Yeah. So this was the start of the Arizona Trail Race. Lizzie and I and our 2 dogs drove up to the border of Mexico in the middle of nowhere. Slept in the van, and then I was like, bye, got on my bike and rode to the start. We couldn't actually get to the start of the van because the roads are like super sketchy. We almost got stuck.
We went the wrong way, that's why.
Yeah, I got lost, of course.
Choose? Yes. No? Choose?
I got lost going through the race. I did remember the street.
Alright,
Yeah, so this is the start, people hanging out. That's me looking bright-eyed and just excited to do the Arizona Trail Race. And yes, can't wait. And then that's me literally. What have I done? This is the worst decision of my life. I lost, all the weight in like 5 hours. So the first couple of days, the biggest challenge on the Arizona Trail was the heat. And this year in particular, it was record levels of heat around Tucson. I ran into a couple of local riders and they were like, it's never been this hot. My Garmin at one point said 116, and it just didn't stop. Like, I've never been that hot and that exhausted in my life. This race had over 50% dropout rate the first couple days. So all those people in that previous picture, like half of them were just like, no, I'm good. People were throwing up. I threw up a bunch. I definitely had some heat exhaustion going on. It was tough. I mean, literally, you would just ride to like the next spot of shade and just catch your breath. And like shade was everything. This was kind of funny. On the top right are the water caches. So these boxes where water is kept. The Arizona Trail has through hikers, just like the Colorado Trail does as well. People hike this thing. And there's water for the through hikers. And the bikers are, like, they kind of discourage using that water because it's for the hikers and we can cover a lot more distance. However, to be honest, I did take some of that water. I spoke to other riders who were taking it. It was just so hot. It's like, I carried 8 liters on this bike and I would run out very quickly. Like, I ran out of water a lot. On the bottom right is a big gulp of Sprite, just ice cold Sprite. And I made it through this stretch and it's like, I shouldn't have drank Sprite, but I just was thinking about it for hours. So good. I rode a lot at night. Some people rode only at night, and that's probably the smarter thing to do. I couldn't quite make that switch to like only ride at night, but definitely did a ton of night riding, which in the desert is a total trip. The desert is just, I don't know what else to say, but it's trippy, I think is the word for the desert. It's amazing. It's like this mixture of beauty and harshness that I just, even though it was like a lot of suffering out there, I just fell in love with it. Like I love it out there. You just feel like you're almost in a dream, kind of. And riding at night was really cool too. A lot of times I would see cities in a distance. You're just riding through this desert. It's like totally desolate and there's nothing out there. And then you see this light off in the distance. And like Tucson and Phoenix are super bright. And I got a bunch of images of that, which is really cool. On the left, that's wildfires outside of Flagstaff. So Arizona did have a good amount of wildfires going on this time of year. I got some really cool pictures of that. Not the coolest, but it did look pretty wild seeing it.
Were you riding in snow?
A little bit. Yeah, it did affect. There were some points where I was like coughing more and more. Yeah, it's definitely a factor out there, and you're not supposed to start fires anywhere really. So one thing about the desert is that everything stabs you, like everything. Literally, like, yeah, you think about it, like, oh sure, there's cacti in the desert. Until you're riding through it day after day, it's just no idea. It's just everywhere. And you run into cactus. It happens. There's no way to avoid it. You try not to, but my legs got totally torn up. Definitely, if you're planning on riding the Arizona Trail, wear leg protection. I had just my rain pants. I thought that'd be fine. but it caused me to just sweat too much, which I was already like low on water. So I got totally tore up. I did get a puncture in my tire at one point, but the sealant did its job, fixed it. I thought I was screwed. If you're riding the Arizona Trail, pick the toughest sidewalls you can find. I had EXO Plus on Nexus Recons, and they did awesome, honestly. Even getting that bad.
Was it a goat head that got you?
Yeah, no, I think it was probably one of these guys. So like those two pictures on the right. I don't know, there's just so many pointy things. That stuff on the bottom left, they're called cholla bushes. Oh my god, I have like PTSD from those things. They're beautiful, but they're just deadly. A lot of wildlife in the desert, everything fights back just like the plants. Talk about that guy in the middle in a second. That was the biggest snake I've ever seen, almost ran over it. Was lucky to stop and get some good pictures of it.
What's the fox?
In the middle, so I'm riding down the trail in the middle of the night, all by myself. There's nothing out there, just in the middle of nowhere. And my headlight looks down the trail and I see a head, and it's like this little fox head. I guess like trigger warning, it's kind of gruesome. And then I could smell, like in the air, the smell of like something just died. Something. And there's this trail of blood. And something much bigger. It just freaked me out. I don't know what it was, honestly. My mind was I was like, yeah, what just happened? Snap some pictures and then just keep going. Another guy behind me, we talked about it the next day, he's like, just a head? Yeah, dude. Totally freaked me out. Yeah. Alright, so first couple days on the Arizona Trail were extremely hot, record temperatures. What I wasn't ready for, I knew it was going to be hot. It was the desert down south, I knew that. But I wasn't ready for it. It was cold. So when I got about maybe 100 miles south of Flagstaff, it started, temperatures dropping, and it got extremely cold. It really started, this picture on the left, and I stayed in that cabin, and that was the first night where I was like, oh, shit. I'm not ready for this. It's really, really cold. And it just kept getting colder. The mornings, honestly, were the worst. It would be low 20s in the mornings. And as soon as that sun went down, the temperature would start dropping. But I would typically try to get on the bike around 4 in the morning, and I just couldn't do it. Like, the gloves that I had were not thick enough, and the socks that I had weren't thick enough to where if I was going maybe over 5 miles per hour, the wind hitting my fingers and my toes, they would just go numb immediately. So I couldn't ride in it. I just wasn't ready for it. That picture on the right, my friends have probably heard this story. I describe it as like the worst night I've spent outdoors ever. Definitely the coldest I've ever been. The temperatures got below 20. As soon as the sun went down around 7 is when the temperature just rapidly started dropping. And like I said, I couldn't ride. So I just had to bivvy up, and I was like, well, I'm gonna be here until the sun comes back up for like 12 hours. Like I couldn't ride in it. I had every single layer on. I had my bivvy, my 20-degree quilt, and I could still feel the cold creeping in, things going cold on my body. It freaked me out, like it was pretty scary. I was lucky that I had bought some hand warmers and toe warmers at like a gas station. I think that saved me from frostbite, honestly. Someone had asked me before, like, well, why didn't you build a fire? I was considering it. Honestly, like you can see that tree, but other than that, there really wasn't anything out there. It was just desolate gravel. I was like 70 miles from any town in either direction. But I got through it, and when that sun came up, I couldn't have been happier. It was another moment. It was just like, I was so thankful that I made it through that night. And I pushed on to Flagstaff, and I did get a hotel. So at this point on the Triple Crown, this was, I think, the 3rd hotel I got. So I only got 2 hotels on the Tour Divide, and then after that really cold night, I was like, I can't camp outside. Like, I have to sleep in a bed with heat. And especially with the knowledge that right after that, I was going to be hiking through the Grand Canyon. So I got some good sleep, ate a ton of food, got on my bike, pedaled up to the edge of the Grand Canyon, and just like, okay, let's do this. You have to take apart your bike, and you have to somehow secure it to a backpack. So on the Arizona Trail, I did have an Osprey, I think it's called a Talon. it's basically the smallest backpack that has a rigid frame on it. The rigid frame helps you, like through hikers use that, it helps take the weight off your back. So take apart everything, take apart the wheels, make sure you have everything, strap it on there, and then you just start hiking. And it's a lot of weight, even with lightweight gear. And what can I say about this? It's wild. I mean, it's amazing, it's beautiful. Raise your hand if you've been to the Grand Canyon. It's one of those beautiful places in the world. But it's pretty crazy hiking into it with all this weight on your back, knowing that you're just going down. You're hiking down for what, like 4 or 5 hours, I think. And there's no way out. Like the only way out is to hike back up. You're either going back the way you came, or you're going back up the way you gotta go, to the north rim in this case. And it's just this feeling of like, oh, I know what I'm getting myself into. Like, this is a lot here. One funny part about hiking through the Grand Canyon with your bike on your back is that everybody stops you and asks questions like, what the hell? So you'd always have to like stop and explain. And I've heard this from other ACT riders as well. It actually takes up a lot of time. Like, I'm doing a race, I have to do this. And I don't think I mentioned, like, it is a law. You're not supposed to have bike tires touch the trail in the Grand Canyon. Start on the south rim. Yeah, it's around 21 miles, I think, total. Yeah, it took me around 18 hours, I think. So quite some time. Started getting dark. And honestly, I was feeling good. Like, I felt like, oh, I got this. I'm crushing it. Tracking every like 10th of a mile on my watch. And then the last 3 miles, it's just completely destroyed me. It just starts going straight up. It's pitch dark, and you're going around. These aren't great pictures of it, but going on really, really steep switchbacks that you can't see anything over the edge. It's just this black abyss. My body is just completely like done. It's without a doubt the hardest thing I've done. So this is the bottom right. I got to the end, got to the north rim. It was still extremely cold. It was at night, very windy, and I found a pit toilet. Pit toilet for bike packers. I call them like the luxury suite of bike packers. You can find an empty pit toilet. I know like normal people, they're like, that's disgusting. But if you can find an empty pit toilet, it's the greatest thing ever. And I found an empty pit toilet that wasn't locked because they were starting to close down the north rim for the winter. And I was able to get out of the wind. It was still cold in there, but all my stuff was everywhere. Ate a bunch of candy, proud of myself. It's like 1 in the morning, and I just passed out. 2 hours later, 3 in the morning, I start hearing. It's 3 in the morning, and I hear like kids running around. One of them's like, "Get up, get out of the bathroom or whatever." And what the hell is going on? I just roll over and go back to sleep. I'm like, God, I'm dreaming. This is not happening. And people kept knocking on the door. And there was another one next to me. People were going in and out of that. I'm like, what is happening? It's 3 in the morning right now. I'm like, this isn't going to stop. Pack up all my stuff. It was literally everywhere, like you can see. I opened the door. I'm just like, I could barely walk. And there's a line of people at 3 in the morning outside of the pit toilet at the north rim of the Grand Canyon. I had no idea what's going on. I talked to one guy and he was like, "Whoa, man, did you ride through it or what?" And he told me these are people hiking the Grand Canyon. A lot of them are actually trail running it, and they started 3 in the morning so they can get back in time. I was not ready for that. So there it is, 3 in the morning, like, got 2 hours of sleep, and now I'm like, all right, let's just finish this. And after the Grand Canyon, it's like 80 miles, I think, to the end of the ACT. And I don't like the Colorado Trail. It was a hectic 80 miles. I was like, I have to finish. First of all, Lizzie was picking me up at the border of Utah, and she had to be at work back in Flagstaff, I think the next day. So it was like, I have to be there. I was like, no one's going to be there to take me home. And I also had the added pressure of, I can't camp in this cold again. Like, I can't do it. There's no pit toilets, there's no hotels. It's a stretch of nothing to get to the end of this race. So I'm just like racing the sun. Like, as soon as that sun goes down, I'm screwed. I was able to make some makeshift pogies in this image on the right. I took my rain jacket and my wind jacket and just wrapped them around both of these handlebars, and that did help protect me from the wind. It's really just the wind hitting you that makes my fingertips go numb. I was able to get through it, and finish some shots from the finish of the AZT. Lizzie was there with her 2 dogs. One thing that happened was coming to the end of it, you're going downhill. The big dog on the left there in the middle that never looks when we're taking pictures with the camera. That's my dog Chewy. He's a husky mix. He's very vocal and makes a lot of noises. And I could hear him like a half mile out coming down this hill just howling with me. And I just knew that they were there waiting for me. Again, then he had the pizza and the beer, and it was the best thing ever. I was the last person to finish the ACT next year.
Yeah!
There's one other guy who was behind me for a lot of the race, and I was rooting for this guy. He was hanging on, and then he went off route and got lost or something, and then disqualified. We were just like,
So what do you use to power your phone and Garmin?
yeah, so I had a dynamo set up on this, so it's the hub in the front creates energy, and also has a light here that runs off of when the light's running, and also can charge. So that would charge things. It doesn't work quite as well on single track. Works pretty good on Tour Divide because you're just moving the whole time. But I had a lot of extra external batteries as well to power it. I got one other slide, and then I can answer any questions. Triple Crown totals. So total for all of it was 45 days, 19 hours of riding, 4,110 miles. 30%.
You're crazy.
Total flats. No flats.
Yeah!
Yeah. Super setup. Total repairs needed. I did need one repair on the Tour Divide. My hub was acting up. It sounded terrible, and I think they just greased the bearing, and it was all good. But other than that, didn't need any repairs. Total items lost in the trip.
Yes.
I mean, I lost tent poles, I lost phone chargers, I wasn't the only one. A lot of Tour Divide riders told me they didn't stuff.
I started and finished with the same number of water bottles, but not the same ones.
Just stuff all
I
on
was
the
saying,
Tour
how
Divide.
much did you find?
Yeah, right? You do, see a lot along the trail. The worst was I had a single pole tank on the Tour Divide. I lost the pole. Total stickers considered easily 100. I had so many stickers. It was just my favorite. Almonds, white chocolate. Chocolate milk and soda consumed way too much. I don't usually drink that or eat like that. It's disgusting. But I just, every town I would get into, it's just chocolate milk soda.
Look at the results.
And yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Any questions? Yes.
If you could change your bike or choose another bike, would you? And if it was, what would you might choose?
Honestly, I wouldn't change it.
You'd ride it again just like it is.
Yeah.
What about gears?
Gear. So I talked about my gear ratio. I had 32-17 on the Tour Divide, and then 32-20 on Colorado Trail and Arizona Trail. So a lot more spinning on the single track stuff. I didn't talk a ton about single speed, but I love it. I think it's perfect for bike packing. It's minimal, it's less weight. I did run an oval chainring up front, which I love. Switching to that, I definitely noticed the leverage. These really wide handlebars, they're from SQ Labs, and then these grips from Ergon, you can really get over it and get a ton of torque going up hills. It's an awesome bike. The first time I did Great Divide, I did on drop bar, Salsa Fargo. Also a good bike, but I prefer the flat bar mountain bike style, just being more upright for covering long distances.
And it's a tie bike, but what is the bike?
So the company's now called Revel. They were called Y before. El Jefe is the name of it.
El Jefe?
El Jefe. Yeah, it's designed. It's named after a rider. His name is Jefe Branham. He runs the Colorado Trail. He's won the Colorado Trail a bunch of times. Super strong, single speed rider. And he just like designed his perfect single speed mountain bike, basically, like for bike packing.
And is all the packs you had?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, that was
it?
pretty much it. The only difference is I did have water bottles mounted on the fork here. I still want to put them on, kind of a pain to install.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is it.
Wow.
What's
Kind
next?
of light.
Yeah.
What's next?
Good question. I don't know. I'd love to do the Rockstar, which is coming up soon. Yeah, I got my eyes on that, but otherwise. Okay. Oh, yes. Thank you. We're doing a route here, a race at Journeyman. It's called Get Lost Gravel Loop. There's a poster right here with a QR code that you can scan and get information on it. It's also near the water fountain over there. If any of this sounds like something you might want to get into, this is a great route to start. We have a 100-mile loop option and a 200-mile option.